Rethink Everything, a journey through the hidden assumptions that shape your life. What if everything you believe about success, love, identity, fear, even truth is wrong, or at least incomplete? We spend our lives accumulating beliefs, like collecting souvenirs from a trip we're not sure we actually took. We gather assumptions about how the world works, how people should behave, what makes life meaningful. We build entire identities around these invisible frameworks, never questioning whether they're actually true or simply inherited from those who came before us. Today, I want to invite you on a different kind of journey. Not one where we seek new answers, but one where we question the questions themselves. Where we examine the unexamined and discover that the very foundations we've built our lives upon might be far more flexible than we ever imagined. This isn't about destroying everything you believe. It's about loosening the grip of certainty just enough to let light in through the cracks. Because sometimes, the most profound transformations come not from adding something new to our lives, but from releasing something old that no longer serves us. Are you ready to rethink everything? Chapter 1. What if you're not your thoughts? Right now, as you listen to these words, there's likely a voice in your head responding to them. Maybe it's agreeing, disagreeing, or simply narrating your experience. This is interesting, it might say. Or, I wonder where this is going. We've grown so accustomed to this internal narrator that we rarely pause to ask, who is doing the listening to that voice? Most of us live our entire lives believing we are our thoughts. We identify so completely with the mental chatter that we forget there's a space between the thinker and the thought, between the observer and the observed. This assumption that you are the voice in your head might be one of the most limiting beliefs we carry. Consider this. If you are your thoughts, then who is the one noticing that you're thinking? When you catch yourself lost in worry or daydreaming, who is doing the catching? There's an awareness that exists independent of the mental noise, a consciousness that observes without judgment, that simply witnesses the constant stream of mental activity. This awareness is not passive. It's actually the most active part of you, the part that chooses which thoughts to follow and which to let pass. When you realize you're not your thoughts, but rather the space in which thoughts arise, something profound shifts. You begin to relate to your mental activity differently. Instead of being swept away by every anxious thought or limiting belief, you can observe them with curiosity, like clouds passing through an empty sky. Think about a time when you were completely absorbed in an activity, perhaps creating something, helping someone, or simply being present with a loved one. In those moments, the chattering mind grew quiet, and yet you didn't disappear. In fact, you might have felt more yourself than ever. This is because you were operating from that deeper awareness, that witnessing consciousness that doesn't need constant mental activity to exist. The voice in your head is not your enemy. It's a tool, like a calculator or a compass. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's wildly off course. But it's not you. You are the one who can choose to use it or set it aside. This realization changes everything. When you know you're not your thoughts, you're no longer at the mercy of every mental storm. You can watch anxiety without becoming anxious. You can observe anger without being consumed by it. You can notice limiting beliefs without being limited by them. The question isn't how to stop thinking. Thoughts will continue to arise as naturally as breathing. The question is, will you continue to mistake the weather for the sky? Chapter 2. The myth of linear progress. We live in a culture obsessed with the straight line. Progress should be upward and to the right. Careers should advance steadily. Relationships should deepen consistently. Personal growth should be measurable, trackable, and always forward-moving. We've created entire industries around this myth, from performance reviews to productivity apps, all designed to help us climb the ladder of perpetual improvement. But what if this entire framework is not only wrong but harmful? Look at nature, and you'll find almost nothing that grows in a straight line. Rivers meander, seasons cycle. Even the mightiest trees grow in spirals. their rings expanding not in perfect circles but in organic, sometimes irregular patterns that reflect the challenges and opportunities of each year. Your life is not a ladder, it's a spiral. You revisit the same themes, the same challenges, the same questions at different levels of understanding. The relationship issue you thought you'd resolved at 25 appears again at 35, but with new layers of complexity. The career uncertainty you faced as a student returns when you're mid-career, but with different stakes and deeper wisdom. This isn't failure. This is how growth actually works. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. You don't steadily improve each day until you achieve perfect balance. You wobble, you fall, you get back up. You might ride successfully for a few feet, then crash spectacularly. Then suddenly, almost mysteriously, something clicks. But even then, you'll have days when your balance feels off, when you need to relearn what you thought you already knew. The spiral nature of growth means that setbacks aren't obstacles to progress, they're integral to it. Every time you circle back to a familiar challenge, you bring with you all the experience and wisdom you've gained since you last encountered it. What once seemed insurmountable might now feel manageable. What once required enormous effort might now feel effortless. This understanding transforms how we relate to difficult periods in our lives. Instead of seeing them as evidence that we're moving backward or failing to progress, we can recognize them as necessary parts of the spiral. The difficult relationship that echoes patterns from your past isn't proof that you haven't learned anything. It's an opportunity to apply what you've learned at a deeper level. The career setback that feels like starting over isn't a failure of planning. It's a chance to integrate all your experiences into a new configuration. The return of old anxieties or habits isn't regression. It's your psyche offering you another chance to heal at a deeper level. When you understand that growth is spiral rather than linear, you stop fighting the natural rhythm of your development. You stop judging yourself for not being further along than you are. You begin to trust that even the apparent detours are part of the journey, that the meandering path often leads to destinations you couldn't have imagined when you were trying to travel in a straight line. The most profound changes in your life will likely come not from steady, incremental improvement, but from sudden shifts that reorganize everything you thought you knew. These shifts often come after periods that feel like stagnation or even regression, like a tree that appears dormant in winter but is actually preparing for spring's explosive growth. Progress isn't about never falling down. It's about falling down differently each time, with greater awareness, more compassion, and deeper trust in your ability to get back up. Chapter 3. Success isn't what you think it is. We measure success by the wrong metrics. We count money, achievements, recognition, possessions, all the external markers that society has taught us indicate a life well lived. But what if success has nothing to do with what you accumulate and everything to do with what you release? Consider the most successful people you know personally. Not celebrities or business leaders, but people in your own life. Chances are, the ones who seem most genuinely successful share certain qualities that have nothing to do with their bank accounts or job titles. They're present, they're authentic. They've learned to be comfortable with themselves. They've developed the ability to find meaning in ordinary moments. True success might be the capacity to be fully where you are, rather than constantly striving to be somewhere else. It might be the ability to respond rather than react, to choose your emotional state rather than being chosen by it. It might be the rare skill of being content with what you have while still being open to what might come. This doesn't mean abandoning ambition or giving up on goals. It means recognizing that external achievements are byproducts of internal alignment, not the other way around. When you're operating from a place of genuine fulfillment, your work becomes an expression of who you are, rather than a desperate attempt to prove who you might become. Think about a time when you felt most successful. Was it when you received a promotion, bought something you'd been wanting, or achieved a goal you'd been working toward? Or was it a quieter moment, perhaps, when you helped someone without expecting anything in return, when you felt deeply connected to a friend, or when you simply felt at peace with yourself? The traditional markers of success are often the result of comparison. You're successful if you have more than others, achieve more than others, are recognized more than others. But this kind of success is inherently unstable because it depends on factors outside your control. There will always be someone with more money, more recognition, more achievements. Real success is internal and comparative only to your former self. It's the success of becoming who you're meant to be rather than who you think you should be. It's the success of learning to love what you do rather than doing what you think will make you lovable. It's the success of being authentic rather than impressive. This kind of success often looks unremarkable from the outside. It's the success of the parent who is fully present with their child, the artist who creates from genuine inspiration rather than market demands, the employee who brings integrity to their work regardless of recognition. It's the success of sleeping well at night, not because you've conquered the world, but because you've been true to your values. It's the success of looking in the mirror and recognizing the person looking back, not as perfect, but as real. When you redefine success this way, you stop chasing external validation and start cultivating internal worth. You stop trying to prove yourself and start expressing yourself. You stop measuring your life against others' highlight reels and start appreciating your own behind-the-scenes reality. This shift changes everything. Your work becomes an extension of your values rather than a means to an end. Your relationships become opportunities for genuine connection rather than networking opportunities. Your time becomes precious, not because it's limited, but because each moment is an opportunity to be fully alive. Success, it turns out, isn't about arriving somewhere else. It's about fully inhabiting where you are. Chapter 4. The Truth About Control. We live under the illusion that we're in control of our lives. We make plans, set goals, and work tirelessly to shape our circumstances according to our preferences. We believe that if we just try hard enough, think smart enough, or want it badly enough, we can control outcomes. But what if this fundamental assumption is not only wrong, but the source of much of our suffering? The truth is both liberating and unsettling. You control far less than you think you do, and far more than you believe you do. You cannot control what happens to you. You cannot control other people's actions, natural disasters, economic changes, or the countless variables that shape your circumstances. You cannot control aging, illness, loss, or the fundamental uncertainty that characterizes human existence. You cannot even control your own thoughts and emotions. As they arise, they appear in consciousness unbidden, like weather patterns in the sky of your awareness. This might sound depressing, but it's actually the beginning of real freedom. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you can focus your energy on what you actually can influence, your response to what happens. You cannot control the traffic jam, but you can control whether you use that time to practice patience or to work yourself into a rage. You cannot control your partner's mood, but you can control whether you take it personally or respond with compassion. You cannot control the job market, but you can control how you prepare for opportunities and how you respond to rejection. This is not the small, limited control we usually think about. This is the most profound control there is, the ability to choose who you become in response to what happens to you. Every challenge you face is simultaneously an opportunity to practice this deeper form of control. The difficult conversation is a chance to practice courage. The unexpected change is an opportunity to practice adaptability. The loss is an invitation to practice letting go. Paradoxically, the more you try to control external circumstances, the more out of control you feel. The more you focus on controlling your responses, the more empowered you become. This is because external circumstances are inherently uncertain and variable, while your capacity to respond with intention and awareness is something you can develop and strengthen over time. Letting go of the need to control outcomes doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned. It means becoming more skillful. Instead of fighting reality, you learn to work with it. Instead of demanding that life conform to your expectations, you become curious about what life is actually offering. This shift from controlling to responding changes your relationship with uncertainty. Instead of seeing unpredictability as a threat to be managed, you begin to see it as the very quality that makes life dynamic and interesting. You stop trying to eliminate risk and start learning to dance with it. The deepest form of control is the ability to remain centered regardless of external circumstances. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or detached. It's about developing the capacity to feel whatever arises without being overwhelmed by it, to care deeply while holding outcomes lightly. When you understand the truth about control, you stop wasting energy on battles you cannot win and start focusing on the one battle you can, the ongoing choice to respond to life with awareness, intention, and grace. This is the ultimate freedom, not the freedom to control what happens, but the freedom to choose what it means. Chapter 5. The Social Mirror. You are not just you. You are also who your mother sees when she looks at you, who your partner experiences when they hold you, who your friends recognize when they hear your laugh. You are the version of yourself that exists in your colleague's mind, the memory your childhood friend carries, the impression you make on strangers. This might sound like a loss of authentic selfhood, but it's actually a revelation of something far more interesting. You are not a fixed, isolated entity, but a dynamic, relational being who exists in the spaces between yourself and others. We spend so much energy trying to discover our true self, as if there's some essential, unchanging core that defines us. But what if the self is not a thing to be discovered, but a process to be lived? What if who you are is not separate from your relationships, but emerges through them? Consider how different you are with different people. You're not pretending or being false. You're simply allowing different aspects of yourself to emerge in response to different relational contexts. The part of you that comes alive in conversation with your best friend might be quite different from the part that emerges when you're caring for a child or solving a problem at work. This isn't inconsistency, it's wholeness. You contain multitudes, and different relationships and situations call forth different aspects of your being. The mistake is thinking that one version is more real than the others. Understanding yourself as a relational being changes how you think about personal growth. Instead of trying to perfect yourself in isolation, you begin to pay attention to how you show up in different relationships. You notice which people bring out your best qualities and which relationships feel draining or inauthentic. You begin to see that changing yourself often happens most effectively in the context of changing relationships. This awareness also transforms how you relate to others. When you understand that you exist partially in others' minds, and they exist partially in yours, you become more conscious of what you're holding in your awareness of them. Are you seeing them as they are in this moment? Or are you relating to old stories about who they were? The social mirror works both ways. Just as others' perceptions of you influence who you become, your perception of others influences who they become in relationship with you. When you hold someone in high regard, you often call forth their best qualities. When you're constantly critical or suspicious, you may inadvertently evoke defensive or withdrawn behavior. This is not about people-pleasing or changing yourself to gain approval. It's about recognizing that authenticity doesn't happen in a vacuum. Your most authentic self emerges in relationship with people who see you clearly, accept you fully, and challenge you lovingly. The goal isn't to be the same person in every context that would be rigid and artificial. The goal is to bring conscious awareness to how you show up in different relationships and to choose as much as possible to engage in ways that feel aligned with your deepest values and aspirations. You are not a static self trying to find the right relationships. You are a dynamic self co-created through the quality of your relationships. This means that one of the most powerful ways to transform your life is to transform the quality of your connections with others. When you truly understand that you exist in relationship, you stop trying to perfect yourself in isolation and start focusing on how you can contribute to the mutual flourishing of your connections. You realize that becoming yourself is not a solitary journey but a collaborative art form. Chapter 6. Fear and desire are twins. What if everything you're afraid of is actually pointing you toward what you most want? What if fear and desire are not opposites, but two sides of the same coin, both arising from the same deep recognition of what matters to you? We've been taught to see fear as something to overcome, eliminate, or push through. But what if fear is actually a form of intelligence, a signal that something important is at stake? What if the intensity of your fear is proportional to the depth of your caring? Consider what you're most afraid of losing. Isn't it usually something you deeply value? The fear of losing a relationship points to how much that connection means to you. The fear of failure often indicates how much you care about success. The fear of being rejected suggests how much you long to be accepted. Now, consider what you're most afraid of pursuing. Often, these are the very things that would bring you the most fulfillment. The fear of starting a creative project might indicate how much that self-expression means to you. The fear of having a difficult conversation might point to how much you value honesty and connection. The fear of changing careers might reveal how much you long for work that feels meaningful. Fear and desire are both forms of energy pointing toward what's significant in your life. They're both responses to the recognition that something matters. The difference is that desire pulls you toward what you want, while fear pushes you away from what you don't want to lose or fail at. But here's what's fascinating. They're often responding to the same underlying value. The person who fears intimacy often desires deep connection. The person who fears failure often desires meaningful achievement. The person who fears being seen often desires authentic self-expression. This means that your fears are not obstacles to overcome, but information to decode. Instead of trying to eliminate fear, you can learn to read it as a compass, pointing toward what you care about most. Instead of letting fear stop you, you can let it guide you toward what matters. This doesn't mean fear is always accurate or that you should pursue every fearful impulse. Some fears are protective and should be heeded. But many fears are outdated responses to old wounds, and these fears often guard the very doorways you most need to walk through. The key is learning to distinguish between fears that protect you and fears that limit you. Protective fears keep you safe from genuine danger. Limiting fears keep you safe from growth, connection, and authentic expression. When you understand fear as information rather than instruction, you can begin to work with it differently. Instead of fighting fear or being paralyzed by it, you can get curious about what it's trying to tell you. What does this fear reveal about what I value? What would I pursue if this fear weren't here? What is this fear trying to protect me from? And is that protection still necessary? Often, the most meaningful directions in life are found not by following your comfort zone, but by following your fears toward what you most deeply desire. The very things that scare you the most might be the keys to your greatest fulfillment. This is why courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in the presence of fear. It's the recognition that fear and desire are often pointing toward the same destination, and that the path to what you want most often leads through what you fear most. When you learn to read fear as a form of guidance rather than a form of limitation, you discover that your anxiety is often your excitement in disguise, your nervousness is often your anticipation wearing a mask, and your terror is often your deepest longing calling you home. Chapter 7. What if you've already arrived? We live in a constant state of not yet. Not yet successful enough, not yet happy enough, not yet wise enough, not yet ready. We treat the present moment as a waiting room for the real life that will begin once we've achieved our goals, resolved our problems, or become the person we think we're supposed to be. But what if this entire orientation is backwards? What if the life you're waiting to live is already here, and you're missing it because you're looking for it somewhere else? The assumption that fulfillment lies in the future is perhaps the most persistent illusion we carry. It suggests that your life is incomplete as it is, that you are incomplete as you are, and that completion will come through acquisition, achievement, or transformation. But consider this. Every moment you've ever experienced has been exactly this moment. Every breath you've ever taken has been this breath. Every experience you've ever had has been happening now. The future you're waiting for will also be experienced as now when it arrives. If you can't find what you're looking for in this moment, what makes you think you'll find it in the next one? This doesn't mean you should abandon goals or stop growing. It means recognizing that the capacity for fulfillment exists right now, regardless of your circumstances. It means understanding that peace, joy, and meaning are not destinations to arrive at, but qualities of awareness to cultivate. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive, most yourself, most connected to what matters. Were those moments when you had finally achieved something you'd been working toward? Or were they moments when you were fully present to what was happening right then? The sunset you watched without thinking about tomorrow, the conversation where you forgot about time, the creative flow where you lost yourself completely in what you were doing. These moments of presence are not special exceptions to ordinary life. They are glimpses of what's available in every moment when you stop waiting for life to begin and start participating in the life that's already here. The paradox is that the more you can find fulfillment in the present, the more naturally you move toward a future that aligns with your deepest values. When you're not desperately seeking completion elsewhere, you can make choices from a place of wholeness rather than lack. When you're not running from the present moment, you can see more clearly what the present moment is actually offering. This shift from waiting to presence changes everything. Your work becomes an opportunity to express yourself rather than a means to an end. Your relationships become chances to connect rather than projects to perfect. Your challenges become invitations to grow rather than obstacles to overcome. You begin to realize that you don't need to be different to be happy. You need to be present to discover the happiness that's already here. You don't need to achieve more to feel successful. You need to appreciate what you've already accomplished. You don't need to become someone else to be worthy of love. You need to recognize the love that's already surrounding you. This is not about settling for less or giving up on dreams. It's about recognizing that the capacity for fulfillment is not conditional on external circumstances. It's about discovering that the very awareness that can appreciate future achievements is the same awareness that can appreciate present realities. When you understand that you've already arrived, you stop postponing your life and start living it. You stop waiting for permission to be happy and start choosing happiness. You stop searching for yourself and start being yourself. The journey continues, but you're no longer running toward a destination. You're walking consciously, present to each step, aware that every step is both a departure and an arrival, that every moment is both a beginning and an ending, that every breath is both a holding and a letting go. You've already arrived. The question is not when you'll get there, but whether you'll recognize that you're already here. Conclusion. The art of unlearning. We've traveled together through 7 invitations to rethink the fundamental assumptions that shape our lives. We've considered that you might not be your thoughts, that progress might not be linear, that success might not be what you think it is. We've explored the illusion of control, the relational nature of identity, the hidden wisdom in fear, and the possibility that you've already arrived at what you're seeking. But perhaps the most radical idea we've encountered is this. The goal is not to replace old beliefs with new ones, but to develop the capacity to hold all beliefs lightly. The goal is not to find the right answers, but to live more skillfully with the questions. This is the art of unlearning, not the accumulation of knowledge, but the release of certainty. Not the construction of better beliefs, but the cultivation of wiser not knowing. Not the solving of life's mysteries, but the deepening of your relationship with mystery itself. Every assumption we've questioned today will continue to evolve. The insights that feel revolutionary now will someday feel ordinary. The questions that seem so important today will be replaced by questions you can't yet imagine. This is not a problem to be solved, but the very nature of conscious life. The capacity to rethink everything is not a destination, but a way of traveling. It's the willingness to remain curious about your own experience, to question your own conclusions, to hold space for perspectives that challenge your current understanding. This willingness is not about becoming wishy-washy or indecisive. It's about becoming more skillful at navigating uncertainty, more comfortable with complexity, more capable of acting from wisdom rather than mere knowledge. As we conclude this journey together, I invite you to carry forward not new answers but new questions, not certainty but curiosity, not the need to have it all figured out, but the capacity to remain open to what life is actually offering. The most profound transformations don't come from adding something new to your life, but from seeing what's already there with fresh eyes. The most radical act is not to change your circumstances, but to change your relationship with your circumstances. Your life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. Your thoughts are not you, but movements in the space of your awareness. Your path is not a straight line, but a spiral dance of learning and unlearning, arriving and departing, holding and letting go. The invitation is not to believe everything you've heard today, but to experiment with it, to try on these perspectives like clothes and see what fits. To use these ideas as tools for exploration, rather than truths to be adopted. Because ultimately, the goal is not to rethink everything once and be done with it. The goal is to develop the capacity to keep rethinking, to keep questioning, to keep growing into the fullness of who you are and who you're becoming. This is the art of conscious living. Not the mastery of life, but the willingness to remain a student of life, forever curious, forever learning, forever open to the possibility that everything you think you know might be just the beginning of what there is to discover. The journey continues, and you are both the traveler and the destination, both the question and the answer, both the seeker and what you're seeking. Welcome to the art of unlearning. Welcome to the journey of rethinking everything. Welcome to the revolutionary act of being exactly who you are, right here, right now, in this moment that has never existed before and will never exist again. You've already arrived. The question is, what will you discover now that you're here?